Hello everyone and welcome to a really awesome game from the penultimate round of the US Championship 2022 between Samuel, Sevian and Hans, Moke and Niemann, and the game itself is really amazing, but what happens during the game is even more amazing. It's one of the weirdest things to ever happen in a game, especially in a tournament of this magnitude. This is the United States Championship, where at a certain point in the game, Samuel Sevian literally takes Hans's king, grabs it off the board, breaks it, or breaks his head, the little cross on the king, and then it's just, he acts like Hans is the one doing something weird, and then he flings the king onto the board, and I have no idea what happened. I don't think they've addressed it after the game. Maybe they have. I haven't seen the interviews. If you guys know what's been happening there, do share in the comments. But I will show you a video of this once we reach that position. So stay tuned for that. Now, Samuel opens with pawn to d4. He goes for the queen's pawn opening. We have knight to f6 by Hans, pawn to c4, and now pawn to e6. We have knight to f3 and d5. So just a standard queen's gambit declined. We have knight to c3 and now c5, going for the Semi-Tarrasch. C captures on d5, and now you could capture, e captures on d5, knight captures on d5, or if you want to have the most fun, you will play c captures on d4. So queen captures, we have e captures on d5, and now pawn to e4. We have d captures on e4, queen captures on d8. We have the early queen trade, king captures, and knight to g5. Now going after knight captures on f7 with check to win the rook here. So of course bishop to e6, and now pawn to a3. You could also capture on e6, but it has been played before, nothing spectacular. So pawn to a3, knight b to d7, and now bishop to f4. And interestingly, Samuel already played this exact game in this exact tournament a few rounds before in his game against Jeffrey Xiong, where Xiong continued with bishop to b3, guarding that d1 square, not allowing rook to d1 or queenside castles by white. But here we have rook to c8, and it is now, as of move 11, that we have a completely new game. So of course Hans knows about this game, and it wasn't hard to prepare for it, as I imagine he knew that Sevian would go for this. So okay, as of move 11, we have a completely new game. We have g3 now, preparing to fianchetto the light square bishop, and bishop to b3. Now guarding that d1 square, bishop to g2, and now we have knight to h5, going after the bishop here, so bishop to e3, and now pawn to f5. Nicely defending the e4 pawn, and pawn to g4. It makes sense to undermine this structure. The knight doesn't really belong on h5, and also you want black to capture on g4, so you can start capturing on e4. So here, pawn to f4 by Hans, going after the bishop, and now bishop to d4. The other idea is you could just trade. For example, g captures on h5, f captures on e3, and after f captures, something like bishop to c5. And okay, you've won your pawn back, but Hans has a beautiful development here. The rooks are doing awesome work. The other rook will come into the game, so black would definitely have compensation. Another thing you could do, instead of bishop to d4, you could also capture on a7, but then f3 is coming and so on. So Sevian not interested in that a7 pawn. He plays bishop to d4 first, and now, okay, pawn to f3, just going after the bishop here. G captures on h5, we have f captures on g2, and now rook to g1. We have knight to f6 now, and capturing the pawn on g2. So rook captures on g2, you do not want this pawn surviving at any cost. So bishop to c5 now, defending the pawn, also offering a trade of bishops, and this is where the game really takes a different turn. There are many ways to continue this game. You could capture on f6, you could capture on c5, and we are going to explore the two options. For example, captures, knight captures here, but then rook to e8, and now this rook becomes very active. The bishop pair is fully operational, so maybe not something you want to allow. Another thing you could do is play bishop captures on c5, go for this trade, and then, okay, if the knight moves, then the h5 pawn is hanging, so let's say h6, and then if g captures, you're going to capture here. But again, rook to e8 seems like a very, very nice move. Okay, you can play f3, defend the knight, then comes rook to f5, goes after the pawn, and still Hans would get a very, very playable position. So instead, after bishop to c5, Samuel plays rook to d1, and it's such a fine move that you have to really calculate properly in order to even try and take advantage of this, if we can even call it an imprecision. And Hans just captured the rook with bishop captures on d1. So let's see what Hans had in what Sevian had in mind. The thing is, you can't go for knight to f7 check to fork the king and the rook, because if you go for this, everything just works in black's favor. For example, king e8, knight captures on h8, and now bishop to f3. Now your rook is hanging, your bishop here is hanging, and let's say bishop captures on c5. Bishop captures on g2, bishop captures on a7, now knight captures on h5. You don't really get anything for your exchange sacrifice. It's 4 pawns each, only Hans is up at the exchange. So what Samuel had in mind is knight to e6 check. We have king to e7, not allowing rook captures on g7 because now the knight hangs, and now knight captures on c5. And this is a move that maybe Samuel missed, bishop to g4, because it's such a wonderful move. It seems like, okay, maybe you can attack the bishop and then just grab the g7 pawn. If you can play this, then black will have a very hard time defending this. The problem is, if you try something like this, look at this, rook h to d8, attacks the bishop. And okay, bishop goes back, nothing spectacular. Still, you have to do something about the bishop, and then we capture on g7. But now b6, the knight is attacked. And what do you do about the knight now? Obviously, you have to move it. If you move it, comes rook captures on c3, and that's the beauty of it. Now, if pawn captures, rook to d1 is just checkmate. So Samuel has to be very, very careful here, as danger lurks everywhere. So he plays knight 5 captures on e4, grabbing back the pawn. Knight captures on e4, rook captures on g4, knight captures on c3. Now a nice in between move, rook captures on g7, king to d6, and now bishop captures on c3. And now Samuel is up 2 pawns, but Hans is up the exchange. But it's very, very hard to make use of that exchange. Since the rook here has to stay guarding the h7 pawn. If you allow rook captures, then the passed pawn starts marching forward. The bishop here nicely controls the queening square, so it's definitely a good trade-off. We have rook h to e8 by Hans, king to f1, and now rook to c7, offering a trade of rooks, but of course not interested. Rook to g4. We have rook to f7. The f2 pawn is weak, so Hans, of course, will go after it. Pawn to a4, trying to get the pawn all the way to a5, so everything is nicely defended by the bishop, and now pawn to b6. Hans prevents this. We have pawn to h6, and now rook to e3, preparing to shift the rook over to f3 to go after the pawn here. Yeah, you don't really... also, if rook to g7, which is a nice move, you can just play rook to f3 and defend your rook while attacking, and then you will be very happy. So here, rook to d4 check instead, king to e6, and now pawn to a5, trying to ruin Hans' pawn structure here. Rook e to f3, going after the pawn here, rook to d2 defending, and now pawn to b5, not allowing his pawn structure to be ruined. Bishop to d4, now going after the a7 pawn. For the moment, it's defended, but... still, it's a nice diagonal for the bishop, and also the f2 pawn is now sufficiently defended. Rook to d7, and now just king to g2, attacking the rook. And you don't really gain anything by attacking the bishop, because just rook to e2 check and you move the bishop, so nothing spectacular there. So rook to f5, and now we have rook to e2 with check, king to d5, and now bishop to g7. And now Samuel has a very clear plan of rook to e8, rook to h8, capture the pawn, move the rook, and then advance the passed h-pawn to victory. So what can Hans do here? He plays king c4. Okay, rook to e4 with check now, king to b3, and now rook to e8, going after the pawn here, rook d to f7, attacking the f2 pawn, and just rook to h8. So he gives up the f2 pawn in order to try and take advantage of the position. And now Hans plays rook to g5 with check. Interestingly, rook captures on f2 is a move everyone would play, and it's pretty much a no-brainer. But the problem is that it's winning. But you have to be a strong player like Hans in order not to play it, because sometimes that's just how chess works. Sometimes you don't play the strongest move because you are very strong. But I will just show it because it's such a fun line. For example, rook captures on f2. King h3, you're going to play rook to f3 check, king to g4, rook to f4 check, king to g3, and now rook to c4. And now you will try to create a mating net for the white king. And okay, if white wants to have a chance, he has to capture on h7. Rook to d7 now. Now you see what's happening. Rook to d3 check, rook to c2 check, rook to d1 checkmate. The only good way to stop this is to go back with the king, king to g2. And now once you try this, rook to d2 with check, there's king to f3. And now once rook to d3 check is played, you have king e2. And now, okay, you can't go for this because the rook would be hanging. So rook to h3 check. Now white will try and bring the rook back into the game. Rook to c2 check. Now you will play king to f1. And okay, now there's no checkmate. You have to first capture the pawn. So rook h captures on h2, and now king to g1. This is how you stop checkmate, but only for the moment. As for example, rook to g2 check, king to f1, rook c to f2 with check, king to e1. Now rook h2. And now just rook to c8. Now rook to c3 check might be a problem, so you're gonna play b4 at some point, and now it doesn't really matter what white plays. Now the position is winning. For example, rook c7, rook to f5, and now you don't even care about the pawn. Even if something like rook captures on a7, the pawn is defended, you're gonna play rook to c5. If white doesn't allow you to go rook to a5, you're gonna play rook to c5, and now after king to d1, stopping this checkmate, now you checkmate this way. King to a2, and now it doesn't matter what white plays. For example, rook e7, king b1, and there is no defense against rook to c1 checkmate. So it's really a wonderful maneuver. I mean, just one that you just have to see. But okay, in the game, rook to g5 was played. We have king to h3 and now pawn to b4. This is always going to be a useful move. And now king to h4, attacking the rook here, and now rook to g6. Hans doesn't even go after the a5 pawn. He first goes rook to g6, and now we have rook captures on h7. But now, all of a sudden, Hans abandons the plan of winning the game, and he plays rook captures on h6. Which basically trades down into a drawn endgame. Rook captures on h6, rook captures on g7, and now pawn to f4. And this is now a dead draw if you play at the engine level precise way. However, of course, they are both humans, they are not engines, and mistakes can be made. But what makes this position so special is that this is where the magic really happens. Here in this position, Samuel Sevian picked up Hans's king. He just grabbed it and he broke it, or maybe he didn't break it. Maybe the little crown from the black king just fell off, and then it seemed like he broke it, but then he was just completely weirded out. I'm just going to show it to you so you see what happened. So this is a short clip from the game. Watch this. So there you have it. That's the position. You can see. Now it's Hans's move, it's Hans's time that's going down, but now Samuel just picks up the king, and the little crown gets broken. So he holds the little crown in his head, and Hans is obviously weirded out by this. He has no idea what Samuel is doing, and then Samuel just flings the king to a completely random square. You don't know what he's saying, but it's literally like he's asking Hans, does he want to step outside? I mean, this is completely crazy. Now he puts the king back, but Hans stops the clock and he calls the arbiter. Obviously, he does not like what Samuel is doing. And Samuel puts the crown back on the black king, and now okay, the arbiter will come, and then he will obviously step in, reimburse Hans for the time lost that the black king spent off the board. I mean, this is wild stuff. So I have no idea what happened there. Why did he take it? The first time I saw the clip, I was like, probably Samuel was so deep into the game. He was, he wasn't paying attention to the real world. And maybe sometimes, when you play a game, you just grab a random piece, and then you just, start shuffling it, through your fingers. Maybe he thought that what he was doing, even though he just grabbed Hans's king from the actual board. But it does, maybe he was just trying to send a certain message. He grabbed the king and like broke his head off. I mean, like it can be interpreted in many ways, but as I have not seen it addressed, if you guys know what happened there, do share in the comments so we can all increase our vast knowledge. But okay, the game did continue, and even though the position is a draw, like I said, it might not be one. So king captures on b2, pawn to f5, Samuel starts pushing his f pawn, pawn to b3, Hans starts pushing the b pawn, we have f6 attacking the rook, and now rook to g2. Hans goes after the h2 pawn, and now, interestingly, there is only one good move here, but it's such a weird move to play that you simply don't play it. And you've seen the situation on the clock. Samuel was down to some 6 minutes, and Hans has over 30 minutes on the clock. In the game, h3 was played, which seems normal. The pawn is attacked, you want to push it, but this is the move that cost him the game. If you actually want to draw this, you have to play rook h5, and it's such a silly move to play. Just give up the h2 pawn. Look at this, rook captures, now king g4, and how are you stopping the promotion? If you put the rook on f2, there's rook to f5. If you capture on h5, it's not a problem. King captures, and after king a2, you will also queen your pawn, and that will be a draw. There's no winning this position. So weird as it is, just pawn to h3, not great. Rook to h5, the move you have to play. I mean, it makes sense once you see it. Of course, you want to play rook to f5. But in the game, h3 was played, and now Hans just plays king to a2. And now there's a problem. How do you start pushing your pawn? It makes sense to put the rook on h5, but here you are just not in time. Just rook to f2. I mean, that's just not happening. So instead, rook to h7 was played, and now we have pawn to b2, and here rook to b7, putting the rook behind the passed pawn. And interestingly, it's not as clean as you might think. There is only one move that wins the game for Hans. So just for good measure, feel free to pause the video and try to find the only winning move for Hans while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on not promoting that pawn. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is a rook to g6. This is the only move that wins the game, and Hans did play it. Now, interestingly, if you just play pawn to b1 queen, rook captures on b1. Okay, king captures on b1, black is now up a full rook, but just king h5. And how are you stopping the promotion? You will have to play rook to f2 at some point to stop the pawn, but then you allow the white king to defend that pawn, play king g7, and then win the black rook. And then white will also be left with a pawn. He will queen it, and it will be a race, but it's a draw. So it's important to play the best move here, and Hans does, rook to g6. Now the point is, once f7 is played, and there's no other good way to defend, you can play rook here, and if you play the rook to f7, then you can no longer play pawn to f7. So Samuel does push it, but now Hans just puts the rook behind the passed pawn, as one always should. King to g5. Now what do you play? Well, rook captures on f7. This is the only way to do it, and that's why Hans played it. Now, if you capture the rook, the pawn queens, but if you don't capture the rook, the pawn queens just as well, so you might as well capture it. So here, Samuel could resign, but he will force Hans to prove that he can win this. A pawn to b1 queen, h4 now. Samuel does have a passed h-pawn, so he will start pushing it. We have queen to g1 check, king h5, now king to b3. Now you will have to win this pawn at some point to start pushing it. That will be the cleanest way to win. So pawn to a6, we have king to c4 now, and rook to g7, attacking the queen, which is a nice trick. If Hans actually grabs the rook, it's a stalemate. The white king has no squares. So instead, after rook to g7, queen to c5 with check, rook to g5, and now queen to e7. Rook to f5, we have king to d4, and now king to g4. We have queen to e6, attacking the rook. Now if you push the pawn, then just king attacks the rook is pinned, you will lose that rook. So king to g5, king to e4, and now rook to f6. We have queen to e7, again trying the same idea. King to g6, now king to e5. We have rook to f5 with check, king to e6, and now rook to f4. And now we have queen to e8 with check, king to g5, and queen to g8 with check, king to h5. Now comes king to e5, attacking the rook, rook f1, and now queen to d5, nicely centralizing. And if you check the black king, then the black king moves, and the queen checks the white king on h5. So rook to f8, queen to d1 with check, king to g5, and now queen to d2 check, king h5, queen to d7, and now we have rook back to rook back to f1. We have queen to b5 now, going after the pawn, and now rook to f8. There's no good way to actually defend that pawn. If you go, you can play this move here, but then many moves are possible here. Like, for example, you can play king to f5, and then the white king is completely boxed in, and the queen covers the f1 square, so you cannot deliver any checks, and white will very soon get checkmated. So instead, after queen b5, rook to f8 is played, keeping that king away from the white king, but now just queen captures on a6. We have king to g5, now comes queen to e6, rook to f1, and now queen to g8 with check. Now if you go, you can't really go anywhere, you have to go to the h file. So here we have king to h6, but now queen to h8 with check, king to g5, now queen to d8 check, king to h5, and now pawn to a5. And it was in this position on move 78 that Samuel Sevian resigned the game, and Hans Moke Niemann gains his third victory in a row, which would be spectacular if he didn't have such a bad start to the tournament, but at least he improved, nearing the end of the tournament. So it's quite a wild game. It was a really nice exchange sacrifice by Sevian, but Hans played all the best moves, and even though he sort of missed that crazy winning line that we've shown, it's good that he did, because otherwise we would never get to see this actual decapitation of the black king during a chess game. This is something, this is something you would expect to see in a bar, or maybe from Wilson the Hustler, but between two top grandmasters playing the United States Championship, I believe this is a first. That's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Regarding the standings, if you guys are interested, not much has changed. Fabiano Caruana still in first place with 8 points. Ray Robson following with 7.5. And it will be very interesting in the final round. Fabiano faces Levon Aronian, and Ray Robson faces Jeffrey Xiong. So we'll see what they can do. 8.7.5 points. With 7, we have Dominguez and Wander Liang, and a whole lot of people with 6.5. So those are the ones that are in contention for first place, I would say. But yeah, remarkable game, remarkable move by Samuel, just stealing the king of the board. I love it. I hope we see more of it. Hope you guys enjoyed that as well. I would like to wish a very happy birthday to Jimmy LeBlanc. That was yesterday, so happy birthday again if you've missed the video. And I would like to thank Anderson Vera, Torkel Stanquist, Ravishing Reptiles YouTube, and Trevor Terrace for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of everything that's happening in the chess world, and whatever you guys deem necessary to show. Use hashtag suggestion. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.